Johnny Ringo, the most feared outlaw of the Wild West. Legend says he was involved in the infamous gunfight at the OK Corral. But did you know his death remains a mystery? Some say it was suicide, others claim murder. The truth? Imagine a man so feared, his very name sent shivers down spines. Meet liver-eating Johnson. In the rugged wilds of the American West, one man's legend stood above the rest. Liver-eating Johnson was not just a mountain man, but a figure of terror. After his wife was killed by Indians from the Crow tribe, Johnson embarked on a relentless quest for vengeance. It's said he would kill and eat the livers of his enemies, believing it gave him their strength. This dude was wild. Fact or myth, his reputation alone was enough to strike fear into the hearts of many. Tommy Gagliano wasn't a loud, flashy gangster. Instead, he operated in the shadows, meticulously building one of New York's most powerful crime families. From the 1920s to the 1950s, Gagliano's strategic mind and low profile kept him out of the spotlight. But make no mistake, his influence was immense. He managed operations with precision, making the Lucchese family a dominant force.
If you think the Wild West was all about cowboys and saloons, think again. It was survival of the fittest. Luke Short, known as the last gunfighter, survived the untamed frontier with a quick draw and nerves of steel. Born in 1854, he faced down outlaws and lawmen alike, earning a reputation that echoed through history. In 1881, he even stood against the infamous Dodge City Gang and lived to tell the tale. You need to hear this if you're a true crime fan.
Some of the most notorious hitmen come from Brooklyn. Meet Anthony Center, one of the deadliest of them all. Anthony Center wasn't just any hitman, he was the stuff of nightmares. Known for his cold precision and ruthless efficiency, Center was a key member of the infamous DeMeo crew. His career in crime was marked by a staggering body count, and he quickly earned a fearsome reputation on the streets of Brooklyn. But what drove Center to such a deadly path? From his early days in organized crime to becoming one of the most feared hitmen, his story is a dark journey into the underbelly of New York's crime world.
If you're a history buff, then you need to know about Chief Dullknife, a true symbol of bravery and defiance. In 1878, Chief Dullknife led his people in a daring escape from a brutal reservation in Oklahoma. Despite facing overwhelming odds, he refused to surrender. His courage and relentless spirit became a beacon of hope for the Cheyenne people. Captured but never broken, Dullknife's legacy endures as a testament to resilience and resistance.
Am I the only one who didn't know about John Wesley Hardin, the Wild West's deadliest gunslinger? Born in 1853, Hardin claimed to have killed 42 men. A notorious figure, he was as swift with his gun as he was with a deck of cards. Hardin's life was a whirlwind of violence, gambling, and narrow escapes from the law. His story is a chilling testament to the ruthless era of the Wild West.
Dominic Napolitano, better known as Sonny Black, was a high-ranking member of the Bonanno crime family. Born in 1930, Sonny Black's life was a thrilling mix of loyalty, betrayal, and danger. He played a key role in the infamous Mafia Commission trial of the 1980s, a trial that exposed the inner workings of the five families. Napolitano's loyalty to the Mafia was ironclad. He even went so far as to induct an undercover FBI agent into the family, a mistake that would cost him dearly. When the truth came out, Sonny Black knew his fate was sealed. In August 1981, his body was found in a warehouse, a grim reminder of the unforgiving nature of mob life. So what drives a man to live a life of crime, and what can we learn from his story?
Meet Squirrel Tooth Alice. In the wild, untamed West, where lawlessness reigned and legends were born, one name stands out: Squirrel Tooth Alice. But who was she? Was she a mere gold digger, or something far more intriguing? Born as Mary Elizabeth Haley in Belton, Texas, she earned her peculiar nickname from her distinctive teeth. Haley had a difficult childhood. The family lost its fortune during the Civil War. In 1864, Comanche Native Americans raided the Haley farm in Texas and took young Haley captive. She remained a captive until 1867, when her parents paid a ransom for her release. From this point forward, Haley was a marked woman. But it wasn't her smile that captured the hearts and wallets of many a cowboy. Alice was a savvy businesswoman, a cunning gambler, and a mesmerizing dancer. She knew how to navigate the male-dominated world of saloons and mining towns with a skill few could match. Did she really manipulate the men around her, or was she simply using the limited tools at her disposal to survive? The lines blur between victim and villain. What drove her to the edge of society? How did she rise amidst the chaos of the Gold Rush era? These are the questions that make Squirrel-Tooth Alice one of history's most enigmatic figures.
Welcome to Notorious Figures in History. This is why you've probably never heard of Frankie Three Fingers Coppola. He was the mobster both America and Italy tried to forget. Here's how he vanished from history. Born in Sicily in 1899, Frank Coppola got his nickname after losing 2 fingers to a double-barrel shotgun blast. In 1926, Fingers weaseled his way into Detroit, pretending to be a laborer, and brutally rose to power in organized crime. A major drug trafficker with an iron pimp hand, Coppola was linked to the Detroit Partnership and was an enforcer for Jimmy Hoffa. When the FBI closed in, he was deported to Italy, but rumors swirled he never really left the underworld. Coppola died in 1982, his true story buried in mystery.
You need to hear this if you're a fan of Wild West tales. Meet Lottie Dino, the ultimate con artist. Born in 1844, Lottie Dino was more than just a pretty face. She used her sharp mind and quick wit to become one of the most notorious gamblers of her time. Dressed in elegant gowns, she charmed and outsmarted some of the Wild West's most fearsome men. But her secret? She was a master of deception and strategy. Lottie never relied on luck, she relied on brains. She made a fortune and earned the nickname Poker Queen. Want more tales of cunning and intrigue? Subscribe for more stories on history's most notorious figures.
Mysterious tone. Waxy Gordon, a name lost in the pages of time. Or was it? Born Irving Wexler in 1888, Gordon was a master of deception and a millionaire bootlegger. Operating during the Prohibition era, he was the silent partner to notorious mobsters like Arnold Rothstein. Waxy made his fortune by flooding the streets with illegal alcohol, but he was no ordinary gangster. He kept a low profile, avoiding the limelight, which made him a ghost in the annals of crime history. But his downfall came when the IRS caught up with him on tax evasion charges in 1933. Convicted and forgotten, the hidden tycoon faded into obscurity. If you think spilling secrets is risky, you haven't heard of Joseph Valachi, the Mafia informant. Joseph Valachi was no ordinary gangster. This mobster-turned-informant shook the very core of the Mafia in the 1960s. By testifying before the US Senate, Valachi exposed the inner workings of the Mafia, providing invaluable insight into its operations. Valachi's revelations led to significant crackdowns on organized crime, but it came at a steep price. Betraying the Mafia was a deadly gamble, and Valachi spent the rest of his life looking over his shoulder. His courage to stand against the mob changed the course of history.
True crime fans, let's dive into the shadowy world of Johnny Dio, the mastermind you never knew. Johnny Dio, born Giovanni Ignazio Dioguardi, was the king of the labor racketeers. In the 1950s and 60s, he orchestrated numerous schemes from behind the scenes, manipulating unions and business deals with a cunning unseen by most. Dio was the puppeteer pulling the strings, ensuring the Mafia's iron grip on New York City's industries. But he wasn't just about money. He was a mentor to future infamous figures like Tony Ducks Corallo. Many feared him, yet few knew his name. That's the hidden legacy of Johnny Dio. Why are there not more people talking about Lotta Crabtree's hidden past? What's something people don't know about Lotta Crabtree? Lotta Crabtree was the darling of the 19th century, captivating audiences across America. But behind the curtain, rumors of betrayal and scandal swirled. Was she involved in the mysterious disappearance of her manager? Did her fortune come from more than just her talents? The lines between fame and infamy blurred, leaving questions unanswered to this day. The Earp brothers made history, but one's tale is often forgotten. Meet Morgan Earp. The lesser-known Earp brother Morgan was a lawman like his famous siblings, but his tragic fate is often overshadowed. Gunned down while playing billiards, Morgan's death was a stark reminder of the perilous frontier life. Want more tales of notorious figures? Subscribe for more. Meet Vincent Mad Dog Coll. Born in Ireland, Coll became a notorious hitman in America. By 19, he was a feared enforcer for the mob. Known for his ruthless methods, he earned the nickname Mad Dog. His most infamous act? The brutal kidnapping of a rival's child, but his reign of terror was short-lived. At 23, Coll met his end in a hail of bullets. Frankie Yale, the name that struck fear in Brooklyn during the 1920s. Yale rose from the gritty streets of New York to become one of the most feared mafia bosses. Known for his brutal enforcement tactics, Yale was Al Capone's mentor and the kingpin of Brooklyn's underworld. But power comes with enemies. In 1928, Yale met his dramatic end in a hail of bullets, marking the first time a Tommy gun was used in New York's history. His death shocked the city and sent ripples through the criminal underworld. What's something people don't know about Hollowhorn Bear? Well, let me tell you, Hollowhorn Bear was more than just a warrior. Born in 1850, this brave leader of the Brule Lakota Sioux played a crucial role in the Great Sioux War of 1876. He fought with honor, striving to protect his people's land and way of life. His influence extended beyond the battlefield, leading efforts for better treatment of Native Americans. Hollowhorn Bear's legacy lives on as a symbol of resistance and resilience. Am I the only one that didn't know Oni Madden's dark secrets? This will blow your mind. Oni Madden wasn't just a bootlegger, he was a mastermind of crime. From running speakeasies to orchestrating hits, Madden's influence was everywhere in 1920s New York. He even turned a Harlem nightclub into a gangster's paradise.
Meet Harry Wheeler, the sheriff they couldn't escape. Wheeler wasn't just any lawman, he was the sheriff of Cochise County and a captain of the Arizona Rangers. His legendary bravery and relentless pursuit of justice made him a true crime icon. Dive deeper into history's notorious figures. Subscribe now for more.
Joseph Massino, once the powerful head of the Bonanno crime family, broke the ultimate code of silence. Known as the Last Don, he was a feared figure in the world of organized crime. But in 2004, everything changed. Facing life in prison, Massino did the unthinkable. He turned informant. His testimony helped dismantle the very empire he once controlled. A legacy of power turned into a tale of betrayal.
If your idea of the Wild West is all cowboys, you haven't heard about Pearl Hart. Pearl Hart wasn't your average outlaw. Born in Canada, she cut her teeth on rebellion and adventure. In 1899, she pulled off one of the last stagecoach robberies in Arizona, armed with a .38 revolver. Her boldness and audacity made her a legend. Today, we creep into the dark side of Germany. We're talking about a guy named Nekati, Nico Arabaci. Nico, a real-life goon, was about that life. Born in Turkey, he went from nothing to one of the scariest crime bosses in all of Europe. He built his power through illegal gambling as an outlaw biker, gangster, and high-ranking member of the Hells Angels motorcycle club. In 2002, he was arrested for pimping, trafficking, assault, extortion, weapons, and racketeering. He confessed during his trial in 2004 and was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Even the toughest of goons could not touch him. But just like that, he ran away to Turkey before he got locked up. This dude was lit. Subscribe for more videos on notorious figures in history.
I bet you didn't know one of the most ruthless mobsters lived right here in America. Meet Tommy the Butcher Pitera. Tommy Pitera wasn't just a mobster, he was an artist of death. With a black belt in karate and a mind for murder, he became one of the Mafia's most feared enforcers. Known for his brutal, almost surgical methods, he left a trail of bodies that baffled even seasoned detectives. His chilling nickname, the Butcher. But how did he get caught? And what made him so terrifying?
Hey, history buffs! Ready to dive into the murky world of the Wild West's most notorious conman, Soapy Smith? Grab your saddle, because we're heading back to the late 1800s. A time rife with outlaws, gold rushes, and a man known for his unparalleled cunning. Soapy Smith, born Jefferson Randolph Smith II in 1860, was a master manipulator who earned his nickname through a deceptive yet simple scam. He'd set up a stand, wrap bars of soap in varying amounts of cash, and sell them. claiming every bar had money inside. Of course, he had accomplices in the crowd who'd win big, encouraging real customers to buy. Spoiler alert, most bars had no money. This was just the beginning. Soapy didn't just stop at small-time street scams. He moved to Denver, Colorado and established the infamous Soap Gang, a group of like-minded criminals. They ran rigged poker games, faked lotteries and even manipulated elections. His gang had a unique knack for blending in, making it difficult for law enforcement to pin them down. But Denver wasn't enough. Soapy needed a bigger stage. Enter Skagway, Alaska, during the Klondike Gold Rush. Here, Soapy set up a fake telegraph office to send messages for miners desperate to contact loved ones. Little did they know the telegraph lines didn't even reach Skagway. A genius move, but morally bankrupt. Smith's reign of fraud eventually caught up with him. On July 8, 1898, he met his end in a shootout at Juneau Wharf. The Wild West lost one of its most cunning figures, but Soapy Smith's legacy as a master conman lives on. So what do you think? Would you have fallen for Soapy's tricks? Let me know in the comments.
Hey there, true crime enthusiasts. Today we're diving into the notorious world of the Wild West. I'm here to introduce you to Fanny Porter, the madam who played a pivotal role in sheltering some of the most wanted outlaws of her time. Fanny Porter, born in 1873, was no ordinary woman. She ran a brothel in San Antonio, Texas during the late 1800s and early 1900s. But this wasn't just any brothel. It was a sanctuary for infamous outlaws like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Imagine that. A place where the most dangerous criminals of the Wild West could kick back and relax. Fanny was known for her intelligence and charm. She made sure her establishment was well organized and discreet, creating an environment where outlaws could evade the law while enjoying some luxury. Her ability to maintain this covert operation right under the noses of law enforcement is nothing short of legendary. But what motivated Fanny to risk so much by harboring these criminals? Was it just business? Or did she have a hidden loyalty to those living outside the law? At her brothel, Fanny provided more than just a hiding place. She offered her guests a sense of community and loyalty which earned her their trust and protection in return. Her alliances with figures like the Wild Bunch Gang meant that crossing her was not an option. It's even said that she never betrayed any of her criminal friends, no matter the pressure from the authorities. Fanny's story makes us ponder. What would drive someone to live on the edge like that? Was it the thrill, the money, or something deeper? If you find stories like these as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more videos on notorious figures in history.
None dared to cross the path of Anthony "Gaspipe" Casso. His name was synonymous with terror and brutality among the ranks of the New York Mafia. Born into a world of violence, Anthony Casso rose swiftly through the ranks of the Lucchese crime family. His cunning and ruthlessness made him a fearsome enforcer. But it was his relationship with the infamous John Gotti and Sammy the Bull Gravano that showcased his true nature. Gotti, the dapper Don, and Gravano, his right-hand man, played their parts in the Mafia's grand theatre. But Casso, he was the dark hand that pulled the strings from the shadows. He harbored a deep, almost psychotic need for control, and his methods were as unpredictable as they were brutal. Casso viewed Gotti with a mixture of disdain and rivalry. To him, Gotti's flamboyant style was a threat to the old ways of secrecy and fear. Sammy the Bull Gravano, though, was a different matter. Casso saw in Gravano a kindred spirit, but also a dangerous adversary. Their alliance was a tenuous one, built on mutual respect and a shared thirst for power. In the end, Casso's paranoia and uncontrollable rage led to his downfall. Betrayal became his constant companion, and it was his own propensity for violence that sealed his fate. Anthony "Gaspipe" Casso remains a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks within the criminal mind.
This is going to blow your mind. Gaetano Reyna, the hidden force behind one of America's most infamous crime families. Born in 1889, Sicily, Gaetano Reina rose from humble beginnings to become a formidable mafia boss in New York. His reign from the late 1910s was marked by cunning alliances and ruthless control. Reina's influence spread through the underworld, yet his life ended in betrayal and a hail of bullets in 1930. His legacy, a chilling reminder of the brutal power struggles that shaped history.
Today we dive into the fascinating life of one of Mexico's most notorious figures, Pancho Villa. Born in 1878, Villa started as a bandit, but he soon became a revolutionary leader and a folk hero. Villa's early life was marked by struggle. He was forced to flee his home after killing a local hacienda owner in defense of his sister. This set him on a path of banditry, but also sowed the seeds of his revolutionary spirit. In the early 20th century, Mexico was ripe for change. Villa joined forces with Francisco Madero to overthrow the dictator Porfirio Diaz. As a leader of the Division del Norte, Villa became a key figure in the Mexican Revolution. He was known for his tactical brilliance and his Robin Hood-like persona, redistributing land and wealth to the poor. But Villa's life wasn't all heroics. He had a ruthless side, marked by violent raids and executions. His infamous raid on Columbus, New Mexico in 1916 brought him into conflict with the United States, leading to a manhunt by General Pershing. Despite this, he remained a symbol of resistance against oppression. In 1923, Villa's life came to a violent end when he was assassinated, but his legacy lives on. He's remembered as both a villain and a hero, a true embodiment of the complexities of revolution.
Welcome to Notorious Figures in History. In the Old West, loyalty wasn't earned, it was bought. And the men who sold it, they were the deadliest gunslingers of them all. Now, before we get started on this dark ride into the past, we ask that you subscribe as a token of friendship before we begin our journey. Today we ride into the brutal world of mercenaries of the Wild West, guns for hire, who sold their aim to the highest bidder. First up, Tom Horn, a former scout turned hired gun for cattle barons. Horn earned a reputation for long-range kills with his Winchester rifle. That boy was lit. He was paid up to $500 per job. He took out suspected rustlers without trial, often striking from ambush. Horn's cool precision made him feared, and eventually hanged for a killing he may not have committed. Ain't that a bitch? Next, Clay Allison, the gentleman gunfighter. He dressed well, smiled often, and killed more than 20 men. He was a brutal gunslinger, and Killer Allison's loyalty could be bought, but his temper was free. One insult could end in with his opponent in a coffin before supper. To friends, he was charming. To enemies, unpredictable death on horseback. And then there was Killin' Jim Miller, Deacon Jim. He never cursed, never drank, and killed more men than most outlaws. A devout churchgoer who carried a shotgun under his black frock coat. Miller charged $150 to $2,000 per body. Cold, silent, nor deadly, until vigilantes finally strung him up from a tree where he dangled for days without trial. In the Old West, a man's word was worth the price of a bullet, and these mercenaries made a fortune cashing in on bodies. Which one would you hire or fear? Let us know in the comments.
Welcome back to Notorious Figures in History. Tonight, Pete the Pick Lafrosia, the Gambino family's forgotten soldier. You know the bosses, Gotti, Castellano, but underneath them, an unseen engine of earners and enforcers ran the business, their names hid in files and surveillance stills. One of those names, Pete Lafrosia, known inside the mob simply as the Pick. He was both a master thief and a trusted killer. Member of the DeMeo crew under Roy DeMeo, described by NYPD as the best auto thief ever. He stole cars with surgical precision, supplying an international racket. The Empire Boulevard operation shipped hundreds of stolen cars overseas, Kuwait, Puerto Rico, turning theft into big business. This is the world where Lafrosia learned his craft, a brutal, efficient coalition of thieves and killers. What follows is a look at a criminal craft turned into an empire, and how one man's skill became indispensable to a violent crew. Pete the Pick, a nickname earned, not assigned. His talent was technical: locks, ignitions, early car alarms, treated like a surgeon treats instruments. NYPD investigators later called him the best auto thief they'd seen. He rarely left a trace. No broken glass, no smashed locks, only vanished cars. When a luxury sedan disappeared without evidence, detectives whispered his name. Month after month he delivered, and the profits flowed. Empire Boulevard became the logistical heart. Warehouses, chop shops, export crates. VINs were altered, paperwork forged. Cars acquired legitimate identities before shipment. Then they shipped them overseas. The FBI would later call the racket colossal. Specific makes and models were targeted. High-end buyers overseas paid handsomely. Reports say active partners earned roughly $30,000 a week each at peak. For Lafrosia, this system was his domain. Procure, prep, ship. He could also be unexpectedly human. A story he tells about being mistaken for a drug supplier in Florida once earned laughs and $2,000. A quirky aside in a life of danger, and a reminder these men lived ordinary moments amid the extraordinary. But the job always pulled him back to precision and profit. Scale brought attention. Federal agents watched ports, warehouses and shipping manifests. The same revenue that enriched the crew would later be the thread investigators pulled to unravel them. Roy DeMeo led a tightly knit faction within the Gambino family, earners and killers in one unit. They operated with autonomy, a group prosecutors later described as extraordinarily violent. The Gemini Lounge served as their hub, a place where deals were made and often lives ended. Among the most dangerous were the Gemini twins, Joseph Tester and Anthony Center, Henry Borelli, cold and ruthless, central to the crew's wet work, and Anthony Center, a close friend of Lafrosia's, bonded by shared work and trust. Lafrosia wore two hats: master procurer of cars and a trusted participant in murder assignments. He was linked to several murders, including cases from the late 1970s. The crew's method was clinical: lure, kill and dispose. Fountain Avenue became notorious as their graveyard. Most crucial, absolute silence. Omerta was their law. That silence brought trust and protection, even when bodies stacked up. Lafrosia would come to be respected for never talking, even when offered deals. Above them sat Paul Castellano, a businessman who liked revenue and hated publicity. Nino Gaggi, DeMeo's direct superior. The crew answered upward when needed. Castellano tolerated the DeMeo violence because the cash flowed into Gambino coffers. But autonomy bred paranoia, internal checks, fear of loose tongues, and brutal enforcement. Connections tightened as indictments and deaths removed key players. By the early 1980s, federal investigations closed in on the DeMeo crew. Roy DeMeo himself would be murdered in 1983, likely on orders from above. Core members, Borelli, Center, Tester, and Pete Lafrosia, were swept into indictments. Lafrosia faced a stark choice: cooperate with the government or serve hard time. Federal offers of witness protection and new identities were likely on the table. He refused. He honored omerta over freedom. Convicted and sentenced, Lafrosia served 26 years behind bars. A quarter century of silence, watching associates die, cooperate, or rot away. Many of his peers would never walk free again. When he walked out, the world had changed. New media, new questions. Lafrosia has appeared in YouTube interviews, speaking matter-of-factly but avoiding explicit admissions. He offers anecdote and context about Roy DeMeo, Anthony Center, and life in the crew, without naming crimes. There are reports a television series based on his life is in development. If produced, the story will bind his name to more famous bosses: Castellano, Gaggi, and the Empire Boulevard operation. His legacy is conflicted: a master criminal who enabled terror and a man who never snitched. The bodies, the cash, the exported cars, all pieces of a brutal ecosystem. Pete the Pick Lafrosia remains an enigmatic figure, practical, loyal and lethal. If you want more deep dives into figures who shaped history from the shadows, subscribe for more videos on figures in
Welcome
history.
back to Notorious Figures in History. In the world of organized crime, we remember the bosses: Capone, Gotti, Escobar. But behind every don stands a darker force: the enforcer, the hitman. These are the men who carried out the orders, whose violence kept the underworld in check. Their names are rarely known, their stories whispered in fear. Tonight, we reveal the hitmen lurking in the shadows, figures whose ruthlessness shaped the criminal empires we think we know. From Boston to Sicily, Russia to the West Coast, we'll explore the lives of 10 of the most lethal assassins in mafia history. As we peel back the myths, ask yourself, which of these men would you fear the most? In New England, the Patriarca crime family had a weapon like no other: Joseph the Animal Barboza. Barboza, a former boxer, was not Italian and could never be a made man, but his brutality made him indispensable. He earned his nickname by biting chunks out of his victims. His violence was legendary, even among killers. Barbosa was Raymond Patriarca's sledgehammer, called in when a message needed to be sent with blood. Even made men feared him. His loyalty was to Patriarca alone, and his temper was unpredictable. Law enforcement linked him to dozens of murders. He was the ghost behind many unsolved slayings. But when the family abandoned him, Barbosa broke the code of silence and became a government informant. His testimony sent his former boss and others to prison, making him one of the most notorious traitors in mob history. He lived out his days under federal protection, hunted by the very world he once terrorized. The animal had turned on his masters, and in the mafia such betrayals are never forgiven. In 1930s New York, Abe Kid Twist Reles was the deadliest asset of Murder Incorporated, the mafia's national enforcement arm. Reles specialized in silent, efficient kills, his weapon of choice, the ice pick. But when facing the electric chair, Reles flipped, revealing the inner workings of Murder, Inc. His testimony led to convictions and executions, shaking the underworld. Before testifying against Albert Anastasia, Reles was found dead below his hotel window. The mob knew the canary had been silenced. Reles's fate was a warning: no one betrays the syndicate and survives. His story is a testament to the deadly price of betrayal. During the Castellammare War, New York's underworld was a battlefield, and Salvatore Maranzano needed the best killers money could buy. Enter Sebastiano Domingo, also known as Buster from Chicago. This dude was lit. A freelance assassin with a fearsome reputation forged in Chicago's gang wars. Buster was an outsider, loyal only to the highest bidder, making him the perfect weapon in a war where trust was scarce. He joined Maranzano's personal death squad, a crew of out-of-town hitmen tasked with eliminating high-value targets. Their operations were swift and ruthless, designed to decapitate enemy leadership and spread terror. In the world of organized crime, the most effective killers are often the least remembered. In 1980s Sicily, the Second Mafia War unleashed a wave of violence that shocked even hardened criminals. At its center was Filippo Marchese, boss of the Ciaculli clan and master of the infamous Room of Death. Marchese was a sadist, preferring garroting and torture over quick kills. His victims were lured to a Palermo apartment and never seen again. Bodies were dissolved in acid, erasing all traces and leaving families with no closure. Marchese's reign of terror claimed up to 100 lives, making him the Corleonese's most feared enforcer. Even his allies dreaded him. His loyalty was always secondary to his bloodlust. But in the mafia, monsters are eventually seen as liabilities. When the war ended, Marchese was betrayed by his own nephew and killed in the same manner he favored. His body, like his victims, vanished in acid. In the end, even the most ruthless killers are consumed by the violence they unleash. After the Soviet Union's collapse, the Russian mafia needed a new breed of killer. Enter Alexander Sasha Solonik, the super killer, a former Special Forces soldier. Solonik was a master marksman, famed for shooting with both hands and his uncanny accuracy. He became the Russian mob's top contract killer, taking out rival bosses in brazen public hits. Solonik's military training made him a ghost. Disciplined, tactical, and nearly impossible to catch. His legend grew after a daring escape from Moscow's most secure prison, aided by a mob-planted guard. He vanished, resurfacing in Greece under a false identity, living in luxury as a fugitive. But notoriety is dangerous currency. In 1997, Solonik was found strangled outside Athens. In the end, the Russian mob's deadliest weapon became its greatest liability. Solonik's legend lives on, a cautionary tale of power, paranoia, and inevitable betrayal. In Newark, New Jersey, Frankie Carbone was the muscle behind the mob's power. Not a boss, but the enforcer everyone feared. Carbone kept the local rackets in line with his fists and his reputation for violence. He was respected and feared by allies and enemies alike, a cold, calculating professional who saw violence as business. Carbone's work was street-level debt collection, intimidation, and, when needed, murder. He was the glue that held the criminal enterprise together, a constant threat lurking in the shadows. Unlike the high-profile assassins, Carbone's legacy was built on everyday brutality. Loyalty in the mob is fleeting, as Larry Champagne Carrozza learned the hard way. An enforcer for the Colombo family and close friend to Michael Franzese, Carrozza enjoyed the spoils of criminal success. But when Franzese walked away from the life, suspicion fell on everyone close to him. The family feared Carrozza might turn informant or simply knew too much. His friendship became a fatal liability. He was marked for death by his own crew. In 1987, Carrozza was murdered, a casualty of the paranoia that follows betrayal. His story is a tragic lesson. In the Mafia, even the closest bonds can be severed in an instant. Loyalty is a one-way street and trust is always conditional. Carrozza's fate is a warning to anyone who thinks friendship can outlast the mob's code. In Chicago, the outfit prized discipline and efficiency, and Fiore Fifi Buccieri was their go-to specialist. Buccieri ran a profitable loan sharking operation, but his true value was as a trusted hitman for the top bosses. He was known for making people disappear, his hits clean and professional. Buccieri's devotion to the outfit was so complete, he allegedly killed his own brother on orders. He was also a prime suspect in the infamous murder of Sam Giancana, a hit that bore all the marks of outfit professionalism. Buccieri's life was long by mob standards. He died of cancer, never facing prison or a violent end. He was a legend in the underworld. On the West Coast, Frank "Bomp" Bompensiero was the Los Angeles family's feared enforcer and a man living a dangerous double life. Bompensiero handled the family's dirty work for decades, rising to the rank of capo and earning a reputation for violence. But facing prison, he secretly became an FBI informant, feeding information on his own crew while still participating in their crimes. For years he walked a deadly tightrope, playing both sides against the middle. Eventually, the mob discovered his betrayal. In 1977, Bompensiero was lured to a phone booth and shot dead, a classic mob execution. In New York, the Genovese family demanded absolute loyalty, and Bobby Borriello delivered. As driver bodyguard and button man for acting boss Barney Bellomo, Borriello was more than muscle. He was the boss's shadow and executioner. His violence was legendary, his loyalty unquestioned. But when Bellomo was imprisoned, a rival faction saw Borriello as an obstacle. In 1991, assassins ambushed him outside his Brooklyn home, sending a message to the old guard. Borriello's murder marked a violent shift in power, a reminder that in the mob, loyalty is rewarded with betrayal. He lived and died by the gun, a casualty of the very politics he enforced. In the shadows of the Genovese family, even the most loyal soldier can fall. From Relis's ice pick to Marchese's room of death, these 10 men reveal the brutal reality behind organized crime's mythic bosses. They were the enforcers, the instruments of fear, and often the victims of the very code they upheld. Their stories remind us, behind every empire are the men who did the dirty work, their hands forever stained. Welcome back to Notorious Figures in History. Let's peel back the curtain on the history of the Mafia, and I promise, what you think you know is only the tip of the iceberg. Today I'm diving into 5 dark secrets you never knew about the early Mafia. Some of these will change the way you think about organized crime and maybe even about your neighborhood barber. First up, did you know the very first American Mafia boss may have been a barber? That's right. Giuseppe the Gimp Morello, one of the earliest known bosses, this evil little man was feared by many. The Gimp ran a modest barber shop in New York by day and a sinister counterfeiting ring by night. Imagine getting a shave and a haircut from this sinister dwarf who at the time was considered the most feared man in Little Italy. Rest in peace, bro, but stay there, seriously. Now, let's talk lemons. Now, listen up, jabronis. You might picture the mafia dealing in bootleg booze or gambling. But in the 1800s, the real money was in citrus. It was like modern-day crack. Early Sicilian mafiosi built their first empire by controlling the lemon trade in Palermo. Lemons were a luxury, prized for fighting scurvy and fetching sky-high prices. The mafia's first monopoly wasn't on crime, but on fruit. Here's a twist you never saw coming. The word mafia itself didn't even start as a criminal term. In Sicily, mafia was slang for swagger, boldness, and pride. Only later did it become synonymous with blood oaths, secret societies, and ruthless power. But the darkness crept in early. Before the mafia was even organized, mobsters were already using terror as a tool. Enter the Black Hand, an extortion racket where handwritten threats, sometimes with crude drawings of knives or coffins, were delivered to immigrants. Pay up or else. These tactics terrified entire communities long before Hollywood ever imagined it. And then, there's the gruesome barrel murders. In the early 1900s, New York City was rocked by a string of killings where the victims were stuffed into barrels and left in plain sight. It sent a message. The mafia wasn't just ruthless, they were creative in their warnings. So, next time you walk past a citrus stand or sit in a barber's chair, pay respect to the Goomba generals who came before and ask yourself, what secrets might be lurking beneath the surface? Which of these dark secrets shocked you most? Do you think the mafia's roots in everyday businesses made them more dangerous or just harder to catch? If you're hungry for more real stories about notorious figures in history, don't be a Fonzanoon. Make sure you like and subscribe.
Welcome back to Notorious Figures in History. Have you ever considered what it truly means to cheat death? Is it merely the act of surviving a mortal wound, of walking away from a hail of bullets when all logic dictates you should fall? Or is it something more profound, something woven into the very fabric of a person's legend? Does it mean becoming a story, a whisper on the wind, something that lives on long after the heart has ceased its desperate drumming? Today, we delve into the life of a man who seemed to have made a pact with fate itself, a man who stared into the abyss so many times that the abyss started to look away. We are talking about Chris Evans, a name etched not in stone but in the smoke and fire of the American West. His story is not a simple one of good versus evil. It's a tangled web of desperation, loyalty, and brutal violence. To understand Chris Evans, you have to understand the land that shaped him. The California of the late 19th century was a place of stark contrasts and notorious figures, a land of golden opportunity but also of crushing poverty and violence. Every outlaw needs a partner, a confidant, a shadow who rides alongside them through thick and thin, and who is willing to use brutality as a tool. For Chris Evans, that person was John Sontag. Sontag was younger and ready for the job, a former railroad worker, who harbored a deep-seated grudge against the Southern Pacific after a workplace accident left him injured and discarded. Their shared hatred for the railroad forged a bond stronger than steel. It was a partnership born of violence, vengeance, and brute force. Evans, the older, more experienced strategist. Sontag, the fiery, younger enforcer. Together they were intellect and raw aggression, a force of nature ready to be unleashed, plotting by candlelight with pistols and bad intentions, whispered plans and maps. Their descent began with daring train robberies. These two were lit. Not clumsy affairs, meticulous military precision. Choosing remote grades where trains slowed, flagging down trains, sometimes with a red lantern. They were sneaky. The locomotive ground to a halt. Chaos began. Masks and rifles focus on the express car, the Wells Fargo strongbox. As their confidence swelled, so did their audacity. The Sontag gang expanded. They recruited others, turning a duo into a formidable posse. Their robberies became bolder and more consistent, more frequent, increasingly violent. The wronged farmer image began to tarnish, replaced by grim bloodshed. The line between rebellion and terrorism is thin. Evans and Sontag danced on it with reckless abandon. When does justice curdle into chaos and revenge? The robbery at Collis, California. August 3rd, 1892, during the heist, a firefight erupted. A railroad fireman was killed. The crime moved from property theft to murder. The gloves were off. Lawmen were hunting killers, not just thieves. public perception shifted. The law was ready to lay down its pimp hand. The gentleman bandit myth was shattered by a dead man. Evans and Sontag had crossed a Rubicon. They became fugitives with a price on their heads, hunted to the ends of the earth. The legend of Chris Evans's indestructibility was truly forged in the searing heat and flying lead of the Stone Corral shootout. In June of 1893, a posse led by Marshal Guard and Sheriff Kay finally cornered Evans and Sontag. They had tracked them to a cabin belonging to Evans's mother-in-law, a place they believed was a safe haven. The lawmen surrounded the wooden structure, believing they finally had their men trapped. The air grew thick with tension. The quiet rustle of the wind through the dry grass was the only sound before the world exploded into violence. The posse called for their surrender, but the only answer they received was the deafening roar of rifle fire from within the cabin. What followed was a battle of almost mythical proportions. It was not a brief exchange. It was a prolonged, desperate siege. Bullets tore through the thin wooden walls of the cabin, splintering wood and shattering glass. The lawmen, positioned behind the relative safety of an old stone corral, poured a relentless volley of fire into the house. Inside, Evans and Sontag fought with the ferocity of cornered and vicious animals. They were severely outnumbered and outgunned, yet they held their ground, their shots precise and deadly. One of the posse members, Victor Wilson, was killed early in the fight, and another, Oscar Beaver, fell soon after. The hunters had quickly become the hunted. During the intense firefight, both outlaws sustained grievous injuries. John Sontag was hit multiple times, his body riddled with bullets, leaving him mortally wounded. Chris Evans himself was a canvas of carnage. He was shot through the arm, had a finger blown off, and most horrifically, was struck in the face by a blast of buckshot that destroyed his left eye. Bleeding profusely, blinded in one eye, and with his partner dying beside him, he was amped up. Any normal man would have surrendered or succumbed to his wounds. But Chris Evans was not a normal man. What kind of will, what kind of sheer, stubborn refusal to die allows a person to continue fighting in such a state? Somehow, under the cover of darkness, the impossible happened. Despite his horrific injuries, Chris Evans managed to escape the posse's cordon. He slipped away like a boss from the scene of the battle, leaving behind a dying Sontag and the bodies of two lawmen. He vanished into the night, a one-eyed gimp, bleeding ghost. When the posse finally stormed the cabin at dawn, they found only Sontag, clinging to life. Evans was gone. This escape cemented his legendary status as an outlaw. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was a spectre, a bogeyman who could not be killed. He had cheated death in the most spectacular fashion imaginable, and in doing so had become more myth than man in the eyes of the public and the law. The escape from Stone Corral triggered one of the largest and most frantic manhunts in California's history. The story of the one-eyed, wounded outlaw was on the front page of every newspaper. But a man so grievously wounded cannot run forever. The law, relentless, caught up to him. He was found hiding in an acquaintance's house, weak from infection and blood loss. The final chapter of Chris Evans' life was not spent on the gallows. He was convicted and sentenced to life in Folsom Prison. The seemingly indestructible man was finally broken not by a bullet, but by the slow, grinding machinery of the justice system. He would spend the rest of his days behind bars, a caged lion. In prison, he became a model inmate, a quiet, introspective man. It is a strange and common paradox, isn't it? How the most violent and defiant men can become docile once the fight is truly over. Did he reflect on the lives he had taken, the chaos he had caused? Or did he still see himself as the righteous warrior he once believed he was? His legacy is a complicated tapestry, woven with threads of heroism, woven with threads of villainy. To some, he remains a folk hero, a symbol of the common man's struggle against corporate greed. To others, and certainly to the families of the men he killed, he was a ruthless murderer, a thief. Which view is closer to the truth? Perhaps the truth lies in the murky grey between the two. Welcome back to Notorious Figures in History. In the annals of the American West, few names conjure such a potent mix of daring, intrigue, and a little dash of dark history. Meet the legend of Rattlesnake Dick. He was a hard-driven man whose life became a story. He stood firm, as the legends would say. A cautionary tale whispered in the boomtowns and mining camps and saloons of the California gold rush. But what happens when the man dies and the legend takes on a life of its own? The story is rigid. What becomes of the spoils of such a perilous career? The story stiff in the minds of who tell its hardened tale. Somewhere in the rugged foothills of the Sierra Nevada, a fortune in gold bullion is said to lie hidden, waiting for a discovery that has eluded treasure hunters for over a century and a half. Does it truly exist, or is it merely the final phantom crime of a master outlaw? The story of Richard Barter is woven into the fabric of the gold rush. Born in Quebec, Canada to British parents, he was lured to California by the siren song of gold in the late 1840s. He arrived as a prospector, full of hopes and dreams, not a hardened criminal, a man of charm and intelligence, some say. When does ambition sour into crime? When does honest work give way to the easy score? His transformation was not instantaneous. It was a slow burn, fueled by disappointment and the harsh realities of mining. The nickname Rattlesnake Dick speaks volumes. It came after an encounter with a venomous snake that left him gravely ill. The name stuck, turning misfortune into menace. Quiet, coiled, ready to strike. The image fit. Does a moniker shape the man? Does it become a self-fulfilling prophecy? California in the 1850s was volatile and lawless, a perfect place to reinvent yourself. Law and order were fledgling and often corrupt. A disillusioned miner watching poorly guarded gold wagons, temptation, immense wealth, abject poverty. In that crucible, Richard Barter the prospector died, and Rattlesnake Dick the outlaw was born, ready to stake his claim not with a pickaxe but with a pistol. The precise catalyst for Richard Barter's descent into a life of crime remains a subject of historical debate. But the narrative often begins with a sense of injustice. The story goes that Barter and his partners had their mining claim unjustly seized by a larger, more powerful mining corporation. In a world where legal recourse was often slow, expensive, or non-existent for the common man, such an event could easily push someone to seek their own form of justice. Was this the turning point? Was his initial foray into crime an act of revenge? It is a question that probes the very nature of criminality. Are outlaws born, or are they made by the circumstances that surround them? His first documented crimes were not grand heists, but smaller, more opportunistic acts of theft. He began by rustling horses. These early transgressions served as an apprenticeship, teaching him the lay of the land, the timing of patrols, and the art of evasion. He formed a small gang, a band of similarly disaffected men who saw the burgeoning society not as something to build, but as something to prey upon. One cannot help but question the psychology of such a group. Was it a brotherhood forged in desperation, or merely a convenient alliance of self-interest? As his confidence and notoriety grew, so too did the scale of his ambitions. Barter and his gang graduated from petty theft to stagecoach robbery, the quintessential crime of the Old West. They targeted the treasure boxes carried by companies like Wells Fargo, which were filled with gold dust, nuggets, and payrolls. They became a persistent menace along the dusty trails connecting Sacramento, Auburn, and the northern mining camps. Imagine the terror of a passenger traveling for days on a rough road, only to be confronted by masked men with Colts and shotguns. For them, Rattlesnake Dick was not a romantic figure, but a harbinger of violence and loss. It was during this period that Barter honed his skills as a leader and a strategist. His robberies were often meticulously planned. He used his intimate knowledge of the Sierra Nevada foothills to his advantage, setting ambushes in remote canyons and planning escape routes through treacherous terrain. He was not just a thug, he was a tactician. He cultivated a network of informants and sympathizers in the small towns and ranches who would provide him with shelter and information for a share of the spoils. What does it say about a community when a notorious outlaw can operate with such impunity? The defining moment of Rattlesnake Dick's criminal career, the act that would cement his legendary status, was the audacious robbery of a mule train on the Trinity River Trail in 1856. This was not just another stagecoach holdup, it was a heist of unprecedented scale. The target was a pack train carrying an estimated $80,000 in gold bullion, a staggering fortune at the time, equivalent to millions of dollars today. This was the kind of score that could set a man up for life, allowing him to disappear and live in luxury. The planning was intricate, involving a collaboration with another outlaw, the notorious Tom Bell. It was a high-stakes gamble that would have dire consequences for all involved. The plan was simple in its audacity. Barter's gang, along with Bell's, would ambush the mule train at a predetermined spot on the remote trail. However, as is so often the case in such ventures, things went awry. The robbery itself was a success, but it descended into a chaotic and bloody shootout. In the ensuing violence, one of the mule train's guards was killed, elevating the crime from grand larceny to murder. This single act dramatically raised the stakes, transforming the outlaws from wanted thieves into hunted killers. How does the mind of an outlaw process such a moment when a robbery for profit becomes a fight for life itself? Following the heist, the gang scattered, planning to meet later to divide the immense loot, but the partnership between Rattlesnake Dick and Tom Bell quickly fractured. Bell was eventually tracked down and killed by a posse, but the gold was not found with him. The lion's share of the bullion, it was believed, had been secured by Rattlesnake Dick. He had the prize, but he was now the most wanted man in California. Barter found himself in a perilous situation. He was in possession of a fortune he could not spend and pursued by enemies he could not easily evade. It is this part of the story that gave birth to the enduring legend of his lost treasure. According to the law, realizing he could not carry the heavy gold and flee, Dick buried the bullion somewhere in the rugged landscape between the Trinity Mountains and the Sacramento Valley. Was this a calculated move, a plan to retrieve his fortune once the heat died down? Or was it an act of desperation by a man who knew his time was running out? Leading the hunt was a formidable figure, Placer County Sheriff J.B. Van Hagen, a man as determined and cunning as the outlaw he pursued. This began a legendary game of cat and mouse, a personal duel played out across the vast and unforgiving terrain of Northern California. Van Hagen was not a man to be trifled with, and he made it his personal mission to bring Barter to justice, dead or alive. The newspapers followed the chase with breathless excitement, turning both the outlaw and the sheriff into household names. For months, Rattlesnake Dick managed to stay one step ahead of the law. His knowledge of the wilderness was his greatest asset. He moved like a phantom through dense forests, hidden ravines, and the labyrinthine network of old mining tunnels. He relied on his network of sympathizers for fresh horses, food, and crucial information about the movements of the posses. It is fascinating to consider the loyalty he commanded. Were these people aiding him out of fear, friendship, or shared disdain for authorities? What does it take for an ordinary citizen to risk everything by sheltering a known killer? Despite his skills, the net was tightening. The pressure was immense, the close calls numerous. On one occasion, a posse led by Sheriff Van Hagen cornered Barter and his accomplice, a man named George Skinner, near a ranch. A fierce gunfight erupted, and in the chaos, Dick was wounded. Yet, even with a bullet in him, he managed to slip through the cordon and escape into the night. These near misses only served to enhance his legend, painting him as an almost invincible figure, a ghost of the gold country. In late 1856, after months on the run, he was finally tracked down and arrested, not in a blaze of glory, but quietly. With his capture, Richard Barter was sent to Folsom Prison, a place from which escape was said to be impossible. He was convicted not for the Trinity River murders, but for his earlier crimes of robbery and mule theft. But Rattlesnake Dick was not just another outlaw. Behind the prison walls, his mind was already at work, plotting a grand escape. Barter discovered the prison blacksmith could forge crude replicas of cell keys. He and a small group of fellow inmates, including his old partner George Skinner, acquired the forged keys. They fashioned shivs and other makeshift weapons while keeping up the facade of compliant prisoners. One must marvel at the sheer audacity and discipline required. How does one maintain such a secret in the suffocatingly close and watchful environment of a maximum security prison? On the night of the escape, they used the forged keys to unlock their cells. They silently overpowered a guard, seized his weapons and took his keys before melting into the darkness. They made their way to the prison walls, and under a foggy night, they scaled them and vanished. The Folsom prison break was a sensation. It scandalized authorities and thrilled the public. Rattlesnake Dick emerged as more than a highwayman, a folk hero who had bested a formidable institution. Once free, he was also marked. He resumed stagecoach robbery with renewed impunity, terrorizing the roads with his gang. What drives a man to return to the life that led to his imprisonment? Is it a lack of options or an addiction to thrill, risk and notoriety? The freedom Rattlesnake Dick won in his daring escape from Folsom was destined to be short-lived. His renewed crime spree triggered an even more intense manhunt, posses fanning out across Placer County and Nevada County. The law was embarrassed and angry, and they would not be made fools of a second time. The final chapter of Barter's life began on a summer night in 1859. A posse led by Deputy Sheriff George Martin and Under Sheriff John C. Boggs received a tip that Rattlesnake Dick and his gang were hiding near Auburn. This time, there would be no clean getaway. The end was drawing near. The lawmen set up a roadblock on a bridge, lying in wait. As Barter and his gang approached on horseback, the deputies sprang their trap. What happened next was a blur of gunfire and confusion. True to his nature, Rattlesnake Dick did not surrender. In the chaotic exchange, Deputy Boggs was wounded, but Rattlesnake Dick was struck by a fatal shot. He fell from his horse, his reign of terror over in an instant. When the smoke cleared, the lawmen approached the body. It was a grim end, but the story did not end there. Another posse member, Johnson, was accidentally killed by a fellow lawman in the darkness. Rattlesnake Dick's accomplice, George Skinner, took his own life rather than face capture. It was a bloody, tragic conclusion that left more questions than answers. With Rattlesnake Dick dead, the pressing question resurfaced: what happened to the gold? The $80,000 in bullion from the Trinity River heist was never recovered. It wasn't on him when he died. It wasn't found in any of his known hideouts. The secret of its location seemed to have died with him. Did he tell anyone where it was? Did Skinner know? Or was the location a secret he guarded so closely it was lost forever? The death was not an end, but the beginning of a new legend. The hunt for Rattlesnake Dick's lost treasure. More than 160 years after his death, the name Rattlesnake Dick continues to echo through the canyons and gold country of California. His legacy is a complex tapestry of fact and folklore. To the lawmen who hunted him and the victims he terrorized, he was a ruthless criminal, a killer who deserved his violent end. Yet, to others, he has become a romanticized figure, a symbol of rebellion against a system that seemed rigged in favor of the powerful. He represents the dark side of the American dream, a man who sought his fortune not with a shovel and pan, but with a six-shooter and a fast horse. Thank you for joining us on Notorious Figures in History. If you found this story intriguing, be sure to subscribe for more journeys into the lives of history's most compelling characters. And while you wait for our next installment, feel free to explore our other full-length stories on the channel. Your engagement helps us grow organically and continue bringing you these fascinating tales from history's shadows.